Gary, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Eric, how you been?
I'm doing really well. Paramount Tactical. I was on your podcast, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And
Something like that.
That's when we discussed the MOA thing.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. If you guys don't know who Gary is, he's with Paramount Tactical. He has a YouTube channel, does a lot of cool stuff. Anyway, interesting enough that I figured, we should have him on, which, Gary and I have become friends, but, he's, I think he's got a lot of knowledge, and, here he is.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. No, I tell you, been watching your content for many years. I think I was watching your content long before I even had a YouTube channel. Got a lot of respect for the way that the content that you put out, the way that you do it. And, no, I think you're a freaking, a huge and good role model in the industry. So thanks for having me on, Eric. I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you. So Gary, I don't know how far back we want to go, but I think enough back that people kind of know who you are. In case somebody doesn't know who you are, it's like, why is this guy even on? Why should I listen to anything he has to say? So, maybe just go back to the military background. I think that's going to be far enough.
Yeah. So, 9/11 happened a couple days later. I, decided I was going to quit my job. I was like 21 at the time and had a family already and everything else, and decided I wanted to go in the military. And so, I ended up at the 101st and ended up in the scout platoon, and then later on as a sniper team leader. I was a sniper team leader during the initial push toward the last half of the initial invasion. I was there for 13 months. So I was a sniper team leader during that. Fell in love with long range in general. Then when I came back from that deployment, I ended up going to selection, ended up, at 1st Special Forces Group there in, Washington State, did 3 additional combat tours, multiple training tours, all those good things. Got out at the end of 2011 off of active duty. I did a year at 20th SFG, and the, guard unit. At the same time, when I was ETSing, getting out of the military, I took a job with a federal agency as a special tactics instructor. That's how I ended up here in West Virginia. We're about an hour and a half from the DC area. West Virginia was the only state that I ever declared that I would not live in. And then, of course, like 3 years later, I was living there.
That's what you
and
get.
I love it. It is. And you know what? It's been awesome. I actually love West Virginia, especially this area. It's kind of a nice area because, when I moved here, the state was really purple, if not almost blue, and it's completely went the other way in the last, 10 or so years, which is really nice to see. You got great gun laws here in West Virginia. You don't, obviously we have constitutional carry. You don't pay taxes on guns or ammo here. So it's ended up being a real blessing and in disguise. And then, so anyways, I was a special tactics instructor for this federal agency, did that for a while, ended up becoming a unit chief for another training program. We were teaching surveillance, counter surveillance, surveillance detection, things like that. A couple of years into that, I got really bored. I don't know. I was just bored. I wasn't shooting as much coming off from teams and things like that. I wasn't getting to do the things that I wanted to do, but I also had really good access, or I had access to some really good people, guys with my background so I decided I was going to start this training company, right? And so the end of 2014, we started Paramount Tactical, and 2015 was our first training year. Now, part of my whole grand scheme of things is we had a really good, pretty large training facility near us, a civilian training facility. And with all my contacts within, special operations, I was going to reach out to them and get teams there and, make all this money, off this GWAT money, and then be doing something that I wanted to do, and have control of the training product that we were putting out. Well, right about that time was when Obama cut off all training funds. And I was reaching out to guys who were like, bro, we don't have that money that we used to have. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to just not do anything. So we started training civilians, and I was really apprehensive at that at first. And now, honestly, it's one of my favorite things to do. We still train military, law enforcement from time to time. But a lot of what we do is train civilians, and I love it. So we teach, handgun, carbine, long range, med courses. We do, now we're on another training facility that is just a we're really blessed with that multi-million-dollar training facility where we can teach, high performance driving and things like that. So that's kind of where we are, man.
Sounds like I need to come take your class.
We'd love to have you out, Eric. Come hang out.
People ask me all the time about, training. Hey, can you train me? Do you offer training, and do you offer classes? And I've done classes. I've done live classes and such, but it's really hard. And it's probably not just me, but it's really hard to put what you know into paper, into words, and transfer it to somebody else and have them get it the way you get it, because it took me a long time to get it. And people tell me that I'm really good at simplifying things, but sometimes, even though in my head I'm simplifying it, depending on where they're at with their experience level, it may still be advanced. Yeah. Exactly. And it's sometimes, if they're fairly advanced, then all of a sudden they feel like I'm going too basic, and I just never know the sweet spot. And it's tough. So, instructors, I have a lot of respect for you guys.
Yeah. And that was coming from, which was really a benefit in this business now. And, coming from a professional instructor, and again, being a unit chief, I was developing curriculum, and I had a bunch of guys, and I still have a bunch of guys now that are instructors that are working for agencies. Like every single one of our actual instructors, we require that you have some sort of operational background with professional instructor experience too. And I think that there's a lot of guys that can shoot well or do whatever really well. They're not good at instructors. And that's a benefit that I think we offer people, is that we're really good at breaking things down. We're good at curriculum development. We're good at delivering a consistent product. And then we have guys that have literally trained thousands of people. So we're not coming up there and being like, oh, I've never seen this before. So I think that's been a good business model for us, is having that professional instructor experience, both me as an owner, but having our instructors, have that as well. It's like, then you go take a 4-hour class, get a certificate, and then now they're teaching people how to use firearms. I think that's not a terrible model, but it's not the model that we ascribe to.
I don't know. I would say it's pretty terrible. Listen, and that's the problem, right? Instructor, like, you have instructors and then you have instructors, right? Just like the doctors, right? The guy that came in last in their class is still a doctor. But okay. So the question is, what would you, I know you probably, do you have like basic and advanced and all that intermediate?
Yeah.
At what point is somebody a good shooter, and that's the question, right? Like, there's really no metric in a way.
You could probably come up with some basic diagnostic drills, just like you could with F-class or whatever else. Like, hey, you could probably say that there's definitely a way to quantify performance, right? What I would say, well, I'll tell you, going back to your discussion or your statement earlier, saying, hey, I don't know where to start people sometime. Like, I'm either talking too high or too low. One of the things that I realized right away when we're dealing with civilians and we're providing training with civilians is like, there's a level 1, a level 2, a level 3. And I don't care what you think, how good you think you are. If you've never trained with me, you're coming to level 1. Because by like level 2, if we're talking about pistol or carbine, like by level 2, we're now into dynamic situations where we're teaching people to shoot on the move. We're doing some, I won't say super advanced, but it's dynamic. And obviously I'm not going to put my instructors or students at risk because you think you're a better shooter or you've had all this training. a compilation of training doesn't necessarily relate to applicable skills or gun safety or anything else. So now what I do is I'm like, hey, I get these emails all the time. Gary, I've done this, this, and this. I've never trained with you. I want to come to level 2. I don't want to come to level 1. Well, our level 1 is not what I think most people think it is. We do hit the fundamentals and all those things, but we push people individually, right? So if you've never shot a gun before and you're in a level 1 course and a guy is pretty advanced shooting, they're going to experience 2 different things. They're going to do the same drills, but we're going to have you shoot a little faster. We're going to put some smaller dots up there. We're going to really look at your fundamentals. And the other thing that I'm really proud of is like with our courses, we're a 1 to 4 or 1 to 4 with our long range courses, a 1 to 5 instructor to student ratio at a maximum with our, carbine and pistol courses. So guys, everyone on that line is getting individual attention. And I've had folks that are like, hey, I'm SWAT, I'm this, I'm that. Early on, probably the first year where I started letting people come, like, oh, okay, well, come to level 2. And I'm like, this was a mistake. It's a safety issue. We're not talking all the stuff. We're not on the same page. We're not speaking the same language. So you're coming to level 1, and then we're going to push you individually and make sure that you get your money's worth. And if every course, I always find this information funny, but every course, at the end of the course, we have a culmination exercise. So we're going to kind of put you probably for the first time under a time, and we give you a course of fire, and everything that we've taught you, you're going to apply. And for these guys, we've had real pushback where guys are like, no, I'm not coming to a level 1. Either take that or leave. I'm like, I don't care. But here's the deal that I'll make you. If you come to our level 1 and you get top gun at the culmination exercise, I'll give you your money back. I've probably had 10 students that have done that, and not a single one has been top gun, even though that they were too advanced for that level 1. So the other thing that we do is we actually do an alumni discount. So we allow students to come back to our level 1s and take those over and over again, or level 2, whatever course they've taken. They get a huge discount on that. And, we have students that have taken our level 1, level 2, level 3 courses 10 times. Matter of fact, I have a bunch of clients that every time I post a level 1 course, I know there's like 8 guys that are going to be in that course because they come to it every single time. It's a benefit. And, we push them and really focus on their fundamentals. I mean, that's really what it is.
Well, that's good. There's, I'm a shooter, and just like you are. And I'm sure as you walk around, maybe you go to a public range. I try to stay away from there. Yeah. But when I do, or even on YouTube, if I'm seeing a shooter or anything, I'm always watching, like, and it's, I can always nitpick something about, well, and trust me, I nitpick it about myself too. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Every time I shoot, on video, I'm like, why am I doing that? I didn't realize I was doing that, Yeah. But when you guys, it sounds like you start them from the ground up and just build them up. I think that's the best way to go about anything. Recently I decided I wanted to freaking play golf. So, like I always preach, get a mentor. So what I did is I went and took classes, Instructor, found an instructor so that he could teach me the right way. And I told him from the get-go, I said, listen, assume I know nothing, because I don't. Whatever I know, I just need you to let me know how many classes I need from you. I'm not going to take 1 or 2 or 3. I need you to build me completely from the ground up.
Yeah.
Because I need to be on your system, because mine, obviously, I don't have one. But my point was, don't work with what I have. Change everything. Because I know instructors, if you go and you buy one class, well, they're going to fix some things and they're just going to let the others go because it's working, right? It's ugly. It's not efficient, but whatever, it works. And I didn't want that. I wanted to have something that I can use for the rest of my life. And it took a lot of classes, but I'm pretty happy with the results, And I feel like in shooting, if you have a choice to do that, it's probably the best way, because, natural point of aim, how to break a trigger, how to handle, breathing, all of the above, right? Like you can't, if they have someone like you that teaches them from the ground up, you can address all those things. And yeah, they may not get it perfect, but at least they've heard it. They know to work on it, and they know what to work on. And that's probably why those guys keep coming back, because they know, like, to me, those are the smart ones, because they go, oh man, I'm not perfect. Let me go through it again. And I bet they pick up something new every time.
Yeah, every time. And we always do kind of like a little AAR after class. And I love hearing from those, our alumni, but really what they are, they're our frequent flyers, our great customers that have spent a lot of money. They spent a lot of money with us over the years, and it's really great to see how happy they are, to see that they're still getting benefit out of it. And we do. We make it a point to really try to make sure that every person leaves there with improved. And to your point, especially when you got, whether we're talking about golf or shooting or any sort of highly technical skill. And let's be real, I think shooting in all forms is really kind of a martial art, right? We don't just take one karate class or a jujitsu class and suddenly, we're stone cold killers. Just like you talked about, when you go over the fundamentals and you're teaching someone the fundamentals for the first time, I don't care if you spend 8 hours with them, they're not going to get all of those the first time. They're going to focus on that one or two thing. And that's one of the things that, I talk with my instructors and I try to remind myself, like, you can't overteach and you can't nitpick everything. Like you gotta find one or two things and try to have them focus on that, because you can talk about the body position, side alignment, sight picture, breathing, trigger squeeze, follow through, and all those things. And as soon as they start focusing on the trigger squeeze, well, their body position, their stance, their grip starts to fall apart. And the more they attend, the better they apply those things and start knowing what right looks and feels like. And it's just, I think people simplify the shooting experience and don't understand what really goes into it. Like, you're an F-class champion, what goes into that, and the time and dedication that it took to get there. And I don't think people really understand that, the work that goes on behind the scenes to make those things happen. It's
hard when people ask me what I do. I'm like, well, I shoot F-class. Well, what is that? We shoot prone 1,000 yards at paper. And they're like, oh, prone? Yeah. Oh, and I can tell they're thinking to themselves, oh, it's not that hard,
Yeah.
and the proof is in the pudding. Every time I put out a video on YouTube or anything, there's always someone to comment going, prone with that scope and that rifle? I'm not impressed. I'm like, yeah. You're never going to be impressed. It's like watching professional pool players.
Yeah.
You watch them, you're like, well, that's not that hard.
I was literally, it was so funny. I literally was watching a professional pool player like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. And you watching them and you're like, oh, that's not that hard. It's like, oh, well, you hit that ball. I mean, oh, his shots are easy.
Yeah.
Oh, I could do that. I mean, all his shots are like straight in, or actually they prefer to not have straight in shots, but you know what I mean? They're like, oh, every shot that guy took was easy. Of course, I could clear the table too. Well, what they don't understand is that professional pool players playing 3 or 4 balls ahead, and they're setting up not the next shot, but they're setting up like 2 shots beyond that. Mm-hmm. And that's the real key, right? And unless you really know that, you can't really appreciate pool.
Yeah.
And it's one of those sports that you can watch and it can be extremely boring unless you know what they're doing. And then it's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. So shooting is very similar. It's, if you see somebody shoot, you go, come on, prone with that big scope but it's not that easy. It is one of the hardest things. I know we're shooting at paper. Okay. I'm aware. I mean, you guys, like, the paper's not shooting back. I'm aware. Sure. Okay. Yeah. However, that is still how we compete, right? Who's going to hit that one-way target at 1,000 yards the most? And I'm talking through rain, through wind, through sun, cloudy, all of the above, all at once. I just came back from England, from Bisley, and you get everything all at once. You get a lot of wind, you get rain, you get sun, you get cloud, you get mud, and you have to shoot what they call 3 to a mound, which means you have 3 shooters. And I shoot, then the next one shoots, then the next one, then I shoot again. So it's about 1.5 or 2 minutes before in between my shots. So it's a new win call every time. And it's not easy.
Well, yeah. And I think anything at those high levels too, like the difference between the top and the middle for sure is like, it's just nuance almost. And again, I think, I do think that, people get lost at, they just don't know what they don't know. So that they don't understand, how much they look at everything as, like you were talking about the pool, like it's an individual skill. Like, oh, that one shot was easy. So, yeah, pulling the trigger, maybe not that hard and not displace the muzzle of the barrel, but all the other things that you have to do simultaneously, and all the mechanical adjustments, the ammo, like all that stuff. It's like, it is. And, that's one of the things you and I were kind of talking a little bit about before we even jumped on here is given what we do, we put ourselves out there and we put out this information and things like that. And you're right. It's tough to even watch myself on screen. I say dumb things. I do dumb things. You're like, what were you thinking right there? And of course you're opening yourself up to all kinds of, people, judging what you're doing and saying, and everybody has an opinion. They're going to critique you, and that's fine. And, you're going to find the people that understand and appreciate how you do things, what you do. And then there's just going to be people out there you're not going to please. And, it is what it is.
Yeah. Here's the disclaimer that I should say before every one of my videos. Most of what you hear me say, I heard it at the same time you heard it. There was no filter. There was no nothing. Like sometimes I hear it when you hear it. Yeah. And sometimes I'm as shocked as people are about this crap that I say, I don't do any scripts, and you're right.
I mean, how many times have you been back there editing a video and be like, what did I just say? Like that was
yeah.
Or, like you'll call something, I've called when you're going through like technical terms of rifle or whatever it is, like, I'm like, all right, look at this bullet. I'm actually trying to show you the muzzle or something. You're like, bullet? Like, you're an idiot. And people, until they get out there and like they do these types of things, like I didn't realize how hard a lot of this stuff was. And then I guess I did. I'm still shocked at some, I'm shocked at the positive impact that we have and the positive things, but I'm also still a little shocked at like people like, hey, we're in the gun community and you're just like, I don't know, like just being an asshole for no reason. Like I don't get that.
Well, that's their job.
Yeah.
You have to let them do their job. Right. That's,
and
I've come to terms with that. Oh, but they're great. They're awesome at it. And then they go to tell their friends. They probably screenshot the comment and send it to their friends, and their friends are a bunch of fucking assholes too. And it's like, and they're like, clapping for each other. Like, you should have said this. Oh, that's right. And then they go say it. And then they're like, and that's the highlight of their day.
It is.
That is what they like. Literally, they that's their trophy, right? Because they have nothing else. And then that's
brought them joy.
Oh yeah. And I'm like, you know what? If I can make them happy, here I am. But it's just fun, and they like to argue about stuff that they really don't know about, they really don't know anything about. And it's great. And I just enjoy it. And, sometimes I argue with them and I got a big fat smile the whole time I'm arguing with them. Cause I that's what they want, and every time I give them something, they get more agitated and more, they dig in their heels. And then eventually I'll just say something along the lines of like, all right, well, I gotta go, take care. And that's it. I just, boom. And that's about the time they were really wound up. And then I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I gotta go. Bye. Anyway, it's always
so
fun.
You mean to tell me that you've never laid out a cogent argument and completely changed their mind? I haven't either.
Not yet.
I'll put that out there. It's like, no matter what you say, no matter what experience, you're like, and you know, I try really hard not to like come from like this position of authority or whatever else, but I do think it's funny. I don't care what discipline you're in. You know, all of these people that.
Well, most of it is your experience versus their opinion.
Yeah,
that's where it starts off incorrectly, right? Because it's they don't have any grounds to even be having that discussion. However, they feel like they do. Well, yeah, you have your experience, but they have their opinion, and that's it. You're not. I mean, how are you going to change something that's theirs? Like, especially being an opinion where they have zero experience or very limited experience. The worst part is very limited experience that gives them kind of the authority or the reason to argue. And what is that? Dunning-Kruger?
Yep,
Dunning-Kruger, man. That's where they're at. They're like, oh, I know just enough. And they just don't know that they don't know, you know? And listen, to this day, I'm still guilty of it. I don't 100%. Think that stuff, I'm still on the Dunning-Kruger. I'm still on the stupider than I should be portion.
Yeah.
But they just don't know that they are.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think we're all guilty of that, to some extent. I don't know that. Well, I'll just leave it at that. And one of the things I will say, I don't know about you, but I've definitely learned, you know, the lesson I just talked about, like, you know, looking back and with engaging in comments and things like that, I don't know that I've ever changed one mind, no matter how nice, articulate, intelligent the response was, or with like, hey, you know what? I'm not saying this like an a-hole. I'm just saying, hey, you might want to consider these things. Like engagement on any of the negative stuff, I think is an absolute waste of time. And I'm just now figuring this out after probably, you know, 2 or 3 years of doing it. You know, I'm definitely a slow learner myself, and it's just not beneficial. And, you know, Joe Rogan says it best: stay out of the comments. Don't even read them. And I think there's some real wisdom to that. I do try to focus on the positive ones. And the other thing too is a little bit of joy that it brings me, because, you know, again, I'm a type A personality. You know, when someone just comes to the comment section out of, you know, not good faith, I just ban you. Like, I'm just going to ban you. I'm just, you know, it makes me feel good, and we just move on with our lives, both of us.
Absolutely. So, snipers, you were a sniper, and, how good of shooters are snipers? Like, this is a misconception that I believe people have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How good are they as shooters?
I think, like with anything, it varies, right? And the other thing that I'd like people to understand is, while a lot of snipers during training fail because of shooting, it's not the only thing they fail because of. Like, sniper is a like, there's a whole field craft and other skill set element to it. There's like lots of excellent PRS shooters and F-class shooters that could never make it as a sniper, and probably vice versa. Like, there's probably lots of really good snipers that are good at what they're doing that can, you know, hit a man-sized target or smaller at distance. And, you know, but they wouldn't necessarily be good at PRS or F-class or whatever other, you know, type thing that you would do. Usually, obviously, there's typically some skill and, you know, crossover with those things. But I think what we're left with is like this, you know, movie concept with, you know, Shooter or Mark Wahlberg or whatever else. There are definitely some extremely skilled shooters out there when it comes to the sniper community. And I think they've gotten better. So I'm getting ready to do the Major Land Sniper Cup up at in Gladstone, Virginia. I did that competition last year for the first time, and it was really cool to see like a whole bunch of representation of all the like the SOCOM community, sniper instructor committees, MARSOC, different Marine Corps. So we had a lot of CAGs out there. I mean, you name it. All these guys that basically what they do is all they do all day is shoot and teach long range. And what's really cool to see now that wasn't a thing when I was in the military, at least not nearly what it is now, is like they literally have like, they're sending all these guys when they don't have duty, they're sending them out to these competitions, they're sending them to PRS. And so now what you're seeing is that you're seeing a lot of these things that quite frankly develop quicker, faster, and better technologies, techniques, all these things, and they bring it over to the military. And we're seeing this, there's less of the line between military shooter and civilian competition shooter is definitely being more and more blurred. And I think that's a really, really good thing, because what we're seeing develop, even when I was in, one of the first training events I ever went to, I got sent down to Snipers Only there in Texas with Jacob Bynum. And so that was really cool to see what was going on in the civilian world. And at the time, who sent us there was Horace. When I went to sniper school, I actually went to sniper school. It was the first sniper school in a combat theater. It was in Iraq, Sinjar, Iraq. I went to sniper school there, and we had the AMU long range shooting teams that were actually there teaching it. So all these guys, it was a really cool thing, because these guys, they were there teaching the U.S. Army sniper curriculum, but like all these guys did was shoot. And now they're going on this deployment, and they're bringing the very first sniper course, Bravo 4 course, to a combat deployment since Vietnam. But they were showing some of the gear, and that was the first time that I saw a Christmas tree reticle. So all these guys were now using this, I think at the time it was like H58 or whatever it was. But as me, I was already on the sniper team, but I hadn't went to sniper school yet. Seeing this while we're still running, MOA turrets and mill reticles and just, crazy stuff that we're dealing with, and performing well, by the way. That's the other part of this too. But anyways, so what I did was I actually contacted Horace and like, hey, at the time, I think I just made E5. I might have still been a specialist. But I was like, hey, Horace, I'd love to, try some of your gear. And, long story short, the guy called me right when I got back from deployment. Well, he emailed me back saying, hey, we can't do anything. We can't send you any gear while you're overseas, but when you get back, we want to send you to training. So to their credit, they sent our entire sniper section, our other two battalions. I was at 187 Rakassans at the 101st at the time, and then one sniper team from the other brigades. So we all went down to rifles only. I think I said snipers only earlier, but we all went down to rifles only and trained on this Horus reticle. And then we were up there, and we had Jacob Bynum and his team teaching us. And now we were doing this rapid engagement of multiple targets that I had never seen done before. We had moving targets out there. I mean, a lot better than a lot of the stuff that we were shooting on post. So there's a lot that the civilian sector brings to the table that I think that the military really understands, and hopefully vice versa too, because there are some things on the military side that I think obviously have benefited and will continue to benefit the civilian side. Yeah,
I was talking to a Delta operator one time, and he told me that they actually bring in 3-gun competitors to teach them kind of what they learned shooting 3-gun, because he says, man, these guys are competing. They're trying to get faster, more accurate. He goes, we have other objectives in mind. So instead of us trying to figure out how to do it faster and better, we just get these guys. They come in and they show us, which is ironic, because back to the comment section, you get some PRS shooter. They're like, a sniper would never do it that way. Yet the snipers are looking into PRS and such, and to see if there's anything that could be useful for them, you know, which is, it's like Formula One, right? It's like everything trickles down, and if it's out there, if somebody has an objective, which like PRS is hit as many targets as possible in a minute and a half seconds, or two, you know, it's like that can be extremely beneficial to a sniper, right? If you know, these guys, the top PRS shooters, they're really freaking good. I mean, my goodness, they're incredible. You know, they can engage 10 different targets, minute and a half, 100% hit ratio
from multiple positions.
From multiple positions. There's a lot going on, and you know, if you telling me a sniper can't benefit from this, I think they can.
Yeah, and I don't see any like the current generation of shooters in the military, and I still talk to a lot of guys. Like, nobody thinks like that. Now, I do think you go back to the early 2000s or the 90s, and I think there's a pre-GWAT mindset of, well, we can talk about that, but I do see people like that, like, oh, you know, from those generations, and I'm sure there's you know, exclusions to this, right? But I do think that people really do understand. And the same thing, you know, once I got to SF teams, you know, we were going in training down at Blackwater. We were having other people come in to train us on certain things. And there's a huge, huge benefit. But yeah, I mean, being able to get into a position and be able to rapidly engage a target at 700 yards with, you know, an improvised position, get steady, get your dope dialed in, everything under 20 seconds for that first engagement or sooner. Like, of course there's a huge benefit to that. Or even, you know, when we do like this Major Land Sniper Cup, there's elements of kind of PRS, but also some more, you know, it's a field kind of a field competition as well, where now you're having to use bipods and tripods and find your targets under a certain amount of time, and then also engage pistol targets. So just being able to do the mental management of everything and be able to do those things under highly technical things under stress with multiple things that you're dealing with, of course, there's a huge benefit to that. And I wish that long range competition, PRS and things like that had been the way around in kind of the form it is now back when I was operational, because I think there's a huge benefit to that. Absolutely.
Now, I think the word sniper gets thrown around a little too much, perhaps.
Yeah.
Especially lately, you know, with the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk
and Trump, the attempted assassination of Trump, especially in Pennsylvania, for sure.
You know, do we know how far the shooter was for Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, about 140 yards.
140 yards?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Number one, how do you get that close, right? Like that's the main thing of being a sniper, is being stealthy but wow.
The problem is that anybody with a rifle that is shooting to kill someone that, you know, and usually if they say it's from an elevated position, now they're deemed a sniper. And you know, coming from that background, it's a cheapening of it. And I don't like to play these semantic games or anything like that. It's a little semantical, but at the end of the day, I do think that you're giving them more credit than they deserve. They're not a sniper. They're an asshole with a gun that wants to kill somebody. They're a monster with a gun. I mean, obviously we both know that shooting a man-sized target at 140 yards with a 30-06 or even 5.56, there's not a lot of skill into that. Like you and I both get somebody behind a gun and within 5 minutes, you know, they're putting 5 rounds on a man-sized target at 140 yards with a decent rifle. So yeah, it does get thrown around a little too much. I don't think people don't understand what goes into that skill, that identifier, the occupation, because that's really what it is. It's an occupation. I think people need to realize that.
Yeah, I think our viewers understand, but it's now, man, I can't even get on social media nowadays, lately, because there's so many ballistics experts. There's so many shooting experts, and it seems like everybody's talking about this. It's well, this and that, and oh, well, a person to make that shot, they have to have knowledge of
elevation,
slope
and dope, and
humidity and ballistics. And I'm like, no, you point and shoot.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, people don't realize. I keep hearing people talk about that, like, oh, he was so elevated. So he was probably around 40 feet from what we can tell at 140 yards. That slope, that angle was probably less than 10 degrees. So there's not a huge deviation. We're not all that concerned with that. It's a lot. That slope is a lot less than what you think it is. That it's not high angle shooting. High angle shooting would be considered, 15 degrees or more. And usually we're talking about it. And it's distance, harder than you think, right? It's harder than you think to get to 15 degrees. It really is.
Well, and then the distance, if it's 140 yards, it's really doesn't matter. Right. The other one I hear is like, to make a neck shot, it's impressive. I'm like, the neck was not the intended target.
Yeah.
I don't think it was.
No. I agree. I think he was either going for a center mass shot or going for a head. Now, I did put out some content, and I'll break the news here. I put out some content, and I talked about, I believe that round had actually hit a plate, and there's some good evidence and some other information that I've talked about in some of the videos where I thought that Charlie was wearing plates. He also was known to wear some sort of body armor. And again, I lay it all out in the videos. You guys go check it out on our YouTube channel, where it really does look like he has a plate or he has a vest underneath. I did get confirmation that I was wrong on that. And I've talked about that. I was like, hey, I don't know this for sure. I think this is wrong. Because we do have some weird things going on with that, because my problem with it being a direct hit to the neck is that there is no evidence of a exit wound, and there still isn't. And I think that still needs to be explained. Also, when he was shot, his shirt like raises way up to his ear. That was really, I still don't have a good explanation for physics or the physics behind that. So long story short, I just did get confirmation that he doesn't have a plate. So I'm still figuring that out, and I don't mind being wrong. I want to make sure we put out the right information. But I agree with you. He was either aiming for the head, or he was aiming and hit low, which is a very real possibility, or he was aiming for the chest and he hit high. The other thing that I know a lot of people said that, there wasn't a clear line of sight. And there is, and I have pictures of the FBI. I've taken pictures from the shooter position. You can clearly see underneath that tent. Again, I think people keep thinking that like it's this big deviation between elevations, right? And it's actually, he's 140 feet away, and or 140 yards away, and you're talking about a 30-foot difference ish between where he was, maybe a little more, but it doesn't matter. The point is that there was a clear line of sight between the shooter and where he's at. And there's a lot of other weird stuff, and I get it. Everybody wants to speculate, and then of course you go down the conspiracy theories, and things get nuts in there. And there's people saying that Charlie Kirk faked his death, which I just think is just abominable if you even say that. And of course, a bunch of other theories that, his security team was involved or whatever else. I understand where people come from on this, but I think you guys need to, hopefully people listening to this are not going to engage in some of those things. Cause I think that's number one. It just doesn't make sense.
So you've been kind of looking into this. I haven't. Number one, I don't have the knowledge to be able to, at least I don't think I possess the knowledge to be able to tell what's reality and what's fake. Not at this time in history. Sure. I mean, freaking AI is all over. I mean,
yeah,
you just never know what you're getting, who you're getting it from, right?
Sure.
But so I was coming back from England when it happened. I was in the air, and we landed, and we get to customs to get our rifles, and of course, the guy sees that we're with Team USA and all that. So the guy starts asking us, like, hey, did you guys hear about Charlie Kirk? I'm like, no, what happened? Like, well, he got shot. I'm like, oh, well, then he's asking us. And we're like, listen, man, I don't know. Well, it had to be somebody trained. And I'm like, how far was it? At the time, they were thinking 200
yards.
And I'm like, yeah, 200 is not that difficult of a shot, Yeah. And, anyway, of course we couldn't use our phones there. So it wasn't until we got through customs and got cleared, finally went outside the airport. And, I asked him, he told me, well, he got shot in the neck. I'm like, was he alive? He goes, yeah, they think he's alive. I went outside, finally had my phone. I looked it up. A friend of mine had already shared a video with me. So I looked at it. The minute I saw it, I go, that he's done. Like there's nothing that can be done just from the little that I saw. However, it's, you talk about conspiracy theories. I get asked a lot because they think I know. I don't. Yeah. And, but some of the things that I've seen make no sense, which is very concerning about every time something happens. Because in this day and age, you would think the information would flow and it would flow easier and it'd be more accurate. It seems like the more information we have, the more inaccurate it is. For example, they found this rifle in the woods, right? And I see the picture of the rifle and I'm like, I'm sure you saw how the scope was mounted. Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, did they throw it off the roof and it got bumped? How did this thing end up looking like that, right? Because whoever mounted that scope doesn't know how to sight in a rifle. It's my first impression. If they don't know how to sight in a rifle, how do they pull this thing off? Yeah. Well, maybe it got bumped, whatever. Well, then I see a video of this guy jumping off the roof. He didn't have a rifle with him. You would be able to tell, as far as I can tell, he didn't have a rifle with him.
So we're going to do a live. Yeah, I did. And I agree with that initial. At least it doesn't look like there's something in his hands long enough to be a rifle. We're going to do a live stream tonight with a guy named Gray. Oh, Jesus. Now I'm having a brain fart. I don't know why. I was literally just talking to him. Gray Hughes. And he does a really good job. He does a lot of like this kind of breaking down and recreating murders virtually and all this other stuff and saying, hey, this is what happened or maybe didn't happen or whatever else. He did a pretty good breakdown of that. So if you're watching this, folks, go watch that on Gray Hughes. It's a shitty camera. He clearly zooms it in and he gets a couple of frames where you can see what looks like so he's carrying a towel to obscure it, supposedly. It is freaking fishy as hell. Like it is a little bit, the whole thing's weird. But he does hit a couple of frames where like, okay, I can kind of see the barrel there. But even then, and I actually measured it. So like that model 63 or 60, I forget which one it was, Mauser. The shortest version of it was like 43 inches long, I believe. And I have a rifle back there. I actually pulled down and measured it. It's a, AR-10 and it's 40 inches. And, I'm 6 foot and I was just kind of like, I literally took a video of me in reference to that. And I'm like, that doesn't look like, and again, dimensions and things like that get a little skewed in that, they shot that thing on a freaking, like, I don't know, 460p potato. So that is weird. Now, I will say the moment I saw the rifle and I saw the scope, mounted really far back that looked silly to me. In the defense of reality, like, we teach long range courses. I've had students that come to our courses with scopes mounted. I'm not shitting on anybody here. I'm just saying like where their guns are set up similar to that. And I'd be like, oh, well, he just set this up prior to this. I'm like, he's like, no, I've been shooting. I'm like, how do you shoot with that optic like that? So there are definitely people out there that are making do with some crazy firearm configurations, to say the least. But I agree with you. Like nothing in that video looks. There's just so much of this, and almost all these. We spent a lot of time. I actually went out to Butler twice. did a drone survey of the whole complex there at Butler, trying to get heights and things like that. I really got involved with that. because I didn't feel like that we were getting good information from the media, from the government. And I do think there's a lot of people that are really disappointed, including myself, with this whole situation with Charlie Kirk. We felt like, and most of our viewers are probably going to be fairly conservative, most of us felt like with Kash Patel in, with Trump in, that we would get better information quicker. And that just hasn't been the case, unfortunately.
Well, and which is kind of what I was saying. You know, it seems like we don't get anything. You know, and the stuff that we get, I'm always very skeptical because it's curated, in my opinion. It's like, why are we not just getting this? Like, apparently there was some man, that older man that was originally detained, or I don't know the full story, but he kept saying, shoot me, shoot me. I don't know if that's true.
It is true. It is true. And the crazy part is that guy has ties to different events, and I haven't looked totally into him. Different events regarding 9/11.
See, so it just got crazier.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
it is the whole, like, every time one of these events happen, like, you know, even with Crooks and, Butler, Pennsylvania, on the assassination attempt on Trump. Like, you know, one of the things, number one, one of the guys that I work with, he actually used to work for me at the federal agency I worked with. He was actually a counter sniper team member on the Secret Service. So when this whole thing went down, there was a lot of people talking about snipers and what, you know, where they should be. And then, you know, there's a huge difference between counter sniper mission and sniper mission, right? What they do as counter snipers is very different. And there's plenty of criticism to go around when it comes to the counter snipers at Butler, Pennsylvania. With that being said, there was a lot of nonsense, or people like, oh, you're supposed to be here. Why didn't we have guys up on the water tower and this and that and all these other things? Let's just, and again, I covered a lot of this stuff, but I had him come on as a former Secret Service counter sniper. And this is like 2 days after this event. So there was still information that we weren't aware of that came out later. But, you know, like, hey, you know, I told this guy, I was like, hey, just tell us kind of what the mission is, what to expect, what we should have seen down there. Where do you think the failures were? And he just kind of broke it down as objectively as possible. And, you know, even he pointed out a lot of issues. And one of the problems that we had was that it did appear, not to make this political, but just a fact, like, it did appear that the Biden administration was withholding resources from then candidate Trump that you would normally see on a site like that. So you have like counter sniper response team. So you have all these people that are out in the public, you know, out with the crowd and things like that. And when a counter sniper sees something suspicious, he can go and say, hey, go check this out for me. So that person is going there and they usually have a local law enforcement. Like, that didn't exist. There's all kinds of things that were clearly major failures. And ultimately, going back to the conspiracy theory thing, I saw failures. And I also don't think people understand how difficult it is to secure a venue, and that if anybody without any real experience, if I'm decide that I want to do something like that, and I think you can easily find vulnerabilities and exploit them, and then, you know, pull something off like what we saw with Crooks. So I didn't think there was like all these extra shooters, and there was no evidence of that everybody was talking about. And, you know, there was initial claims of seeing people up on the water tower, which made no sense. Come to find out, it was just distortion. A lot of these myths were found to be just that. But what we don't have is we don't know anything about the shooter. There was clearly I do think there's confirmed reports where they went to his house and they basically sterilized everything. We have no social media footprint on there. There definitely is so much suspicious activity on the backside of it, whereas I think the front side of the actual attack is fairly cut and dry. But we never got that information. And again, it's like, okay, well, this is the Biden administration. They don't care. And, you know, that was their intent. Like, we got this figured out. We're not going to give you you don't deserve anything, any information from the public. And of course it was just bad press for them too. So they wanted it to kind of get rid of that as quickly as possible. And not only was it bad press for them, it was really good press for, their opponent, which was President Trump. But there did seem to be some weird things on the front side in the planning preparation that we never got answers to, and we probably never will get answers to. And I think we're kind of seeing some of the same things with the Charlie Kirk situation.
It's crazy, simply, like I said, because we just don't get any information, and the stuff that we get, I question because it makes no sense.
Yeah.
And, like I get it, anybody with experience can find vulnerable spots in any security detail. However, these guys were, as far as I know, they weren't very experienced. Like how can they, like Charlie Kirk, guy, it was like super easy, once they lay it out, it's like he went up the stairs, you know what I mean? Just, there was, and I get it. Charlie Kirk didn't have the security detail that Trump did, but still, the fact that it happens 140 yards away, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I do think that. Look, I used to teach mobile and personal security. I've done a lot of security consulting from a physical security aspect. I've done site surveys, security site surveys, those types of things. And I think people underestimate how easy. Look, even going back to the Trump situation, one of the things I've talked about multiple times is like, given what Trump was doing in the rallies that he was having and the amount of security assets that he had access to, which wasn't very many and clearly wasn't enough, I think that he could have been killed or shot at any one of those events. And the same thing with this Charlie Kirk situation is you have, from Charlie Kirk's standpoint, you have about 270 degrees of potential threats from the ground all the way up to the sky, up to at least the skyline. You have multiple buildings, multiple windows. You have all of this area that has to be covered by some sort of security asset. I think that, and again, we see Charlie Kirk at all these other events, and had he not been killed in future events, where a lot of this stuff is just they just want to give the optics of security because there's some deterrent there, but there's not, like, anybody can get through that. Literally anybody could have shot Charlie Kirk at any one of these school events in the past, just walked up to him, because he did have a PSD team, right? Personal security detail. But I mean, from a common sense standpoint, the most likely threat is to come within, right here in the major crowd. They don't have somebody that they can dedicate to just sitting up there with binos and doing a counter sniper mission. Like, they don't have that. And by the way, if they had that, let's say they had a guy right here and they're looking at all these windows and rooftops and all this other stuff, and then suddenly a guy in the front row right in front of him pulls out a gun and shoots Charlie Kirk with a handgun, we'd all be saying, what a freaking idiot. Like, what, somebody's going to climb on top of the roof and kill him from 200 yards away? They would need to be a trained asset. Like, they would have to know the air density, and they need to know the slope dope, and like, they'd need a Kestrel up there and a spotter and freaking all kinds of different, like, that's what they would say. And really, personal security just doesn't work like what most people think. And Charlie Kirk and even President Trump, they know the risk that they're taking to some extent when they go out there. And of course, as a president, they've beefed up security. I went to the second Butler rally. I wasn't at the first one, but I went to the second one. And the contrast, the dichotomy of security prior to and then, they had like multiple drones up in the air that were on these tethers. They could fly the whole time. They had like, the whole area was walled off by these sea land containers. There was local and federal law enforcement on every freaking roof. Like, there was nobody getting through that. That was like legit security. And I don't think we see that very often.
Yeah. It's, like you said, it's, the most likely threat would have been in the crowd, which is probably what they focused on.
It is. And it's the only thing they had the resources to focus on with, a small detail like that. Like Charlie's not a politician. He doesn't have taxpayer funded multiple electronic and physical and personnel assets to monitor 360-degree bubble around him out to 200 yards. It's just not realistic.
So what do you think's happening? Like, why is this happening? What's happening with society? Based on your experience.
Well, I mean, we're going to get super political. I don't, look, I think that what we've done as conservatives is we've let the left roll over us for many, many years. And I think we have a mindset in the Republican right wing, whatever you want to call us, right? Where it's like, hey, we're not the ones out there protesting all the time. We're not doing all those things. And when we see these, we fail to correlate these different events that are culminating in something larger. And one of the things that we've failed to really identify is the fact that I think the left is much more strategic and cohesive than we give them credit for. So we've seen the left where they've taken over academia, everything from kindergarten all the way up through postgraduate degrees. We've seen them take over Hollywood, the mainstream media, all social media. And the thing that really scares the shit out of me is that it is the most extreme left wing outside of Elon that are developing these AI, all the, artificial intelligence. And we want to sit there and pretend that it is meant for, national dominance. And it's not. I think what we're looking at is it's a race for information dominance. And we're going to get to the point, we already are there. Like, we can't tell fact from fiction. When we rely on AI in 10 years for, fact checking something, and it gives us utter nonsense, like, what else do we have to compare it to? So I think we're going to be like, all information is going to be completely controlled. But, the point being is we have seeded so much of society in the name of, I'm just going to ignore them. I'm going to continue to do what I'm going to do. And I just need to, focus on my family and focus on my job while we're losing our family. Like, we have our kids going to everything from Hollywood. They are constantly indoctrinated against things that are into things that we oppose. And, we give them with these we give these teachers our kids for 8 hours a day for 300, 200 something days a year, from the time that they're infants all the way to the time that, they're in college and beyond. And like, we've been losing this for so long, and it's because we don't want to get out there and make our voices heard. And that's what Charlie did, right? Charlie and President Trump, whether you like President Trump or not, but I think most people on the conservative side like President Trump because he was the first one that wouldn't cede any ground and would fight back. And you may think that doesn't look good or whatever else. And Charlie was one of those people out there, him and a couple other, that like, no, you're not going to tell me that boys are girls and they can switch from one sex to another. I'm not going to give you, like, I'm not going to allow you to try to say that, to try to pass off a bullshit as a fact. This is a scientific fact or anything else. I don't think that men should be in girls' bathrooms, or, whatever the issue is, whether you're, if you're conservative, on abortion or whatever it is. Like, we've been this shrinking violet for so long and been afraid. And then, of course, part of the problem is like, we're going to be called racist. You're going to be called a bigot. You're going to be called transphobe. You're going to be called a Nazi. You're going to be called Hitler, all those things. And we have been cowered into silence. And I think we've seen the culmination of this going back to, July of last year, when we had President Trump, the attempted assassination on Trump, and now Charlie Kirk. And that's another thing on the left, is they've turned every person out there that opposes them into a existential threat. Like, Charlie Kirk was the worst. President Trump is the worst. So the implied and not so implied task is like, hey, you're a national hero if you take them out. Like, there is no justification to allow them to live. So, indirectly, and I would even say directly, they have been indoctrinating people to a proclivity of violence against those on the right. And I think people on the right are finally waking up like, enough is enough. We're not going to just allow you to call us these names or to demonize us without some sort of pushback.
I agree. So, anyway, back to,
when we talking about guns,
back to the podcast. So you train people, day in, day out. What are, for a viewer, somebody watching, what are some of the basics, some of the fundamentals that they should focus on if they want to become good long range shooters? What do you see?
Again, I think it's always the basics, right? It's the fundamentals, body position, making sure. And I would even say, I'll tell you, like, from what I know and I see with F class, I think we obviously do some things and approach some of these fundamentals maybe a little different. Correct me if I'm wrong. But again, it is different disciplines. But, body position, making sure you're in line with the gun. One of the biggest problems that I see is, people are cocked way over. We just recently, during one of our last courses, we were playing around with that, me and one of the instructors. And we were trying to see if we could actually kind of quantify the difference between things like being directly behind the gun versus kind of being canted off to one side, loading up the bipods versus kind of like a free recoil with the bipods, multiple different things. And one of the biggest differences as far as recoil management that was absolutely reproducible was not even loading the bipods, which I thought was going to be probably the biggest difference of keeping your optic on target during recoil or after recoil. But the biggest difference by far was being canted in relation to the gun. So, so kind of that older style. I've approached this and I'm off to one side as you're laying in the prone, as opposed to being directly in line with the gun with the kind of, I always tell students, your rifle needs to basically, if we drew a line from the rifle all the way back, it would bisect if you're a right hand shooter, your right buttock. So that was the biggest difference. But so body position, sight alignment, sight picture, breathing, trigger squeeze, all of those things. And then follow through. And people think about, and I think even people teach, and I've been guilty of this myself, we teach these fundamentals as this like linear step. But the thing is like, people don't really think about the fact that when I squeeze that trigger, like all of those things need to be culminating and happening at the exact same time. And then really, that's the biggest thing, whether you're grouping or wanting to shoot, whether you're wanting to shoot PRS or just do things for recreational or whatever else, I would say, make sure you're in line with that gun. And in the same, we teach the exact same thing when we're talking about carbine or pistol, whatever else. We have moved away from blading the body with a pistol like this, or, even with a carbine, we've moved away from blading the body, and, we're bringing that carbine buttstock more in line with your sternum, more closer underneath your chest, just because you can manage recoil and can manage that gun better than some of the old stuff out there. And of course, just, basic equipment setup and things like that are always a challenge.
Yeah, in F class, don't go to an F class match. Some of these guys are like 90 degrees to the rifle, and it's horrendous. Like, I see it, and like, I'm not perfect. I try to get behind the rifle straight, but I'm not and that's what I was talking about earlier. I'm not as good as I wish I was, and I do still practice it, and I practice when I go practice. I have tried that, and oftentimes I'll have F class shooters. Some of these guys that I'm mentoring, they'll call me up and say, "Hey, every time I shoot, my rifle keeps," because even though we have a front rest and a rear bag, it's not. There's a lot of recoil, so if you don't get it right, it's gonna be a struggle. And they'll say,
I'm curious, how does that from an F class perspective, Eric? I know a lot of, or some guys like free recoil.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on that? Like, you don't.
I shoot it like a man. I hold on to the rifle. and see, so I hold on to the rifle, because see, I do shoot PRS every now and then for fun. And I find that if I hold them the same, then I'm working on both at the same time, right? But they'll say, hey, every time I shoot, my rifle ends up on the next target over, and I have to bring it back every time. And so what happened is the rear bag kept sliding, and then they got to do what we call the karate chop. You hit the bag and you move it over slightly and brings the rifle back, and then you shoot again. Well, if you don't watch it, you're going to shoot on the neighbor's target, which is a 0, right? So that's not good for your score. But it's just a lot of breaks your concentration having to realign it every time. And right away I tell them, I said, well, you're cocked sideways too much. You're creating a pivot point right here. Every time it recoils, it shoves to the right because it's got nowhere else to go but that way, right? So that's why it's going to the left. So I just tell them, I said, keep aligning, keep turning until you're behind the rifle. And they're like, how far? I said, keep going until the rifle starts to bounce the other way and then come back. Because I think the biggest mistake they make is something they don't go far enough. Because they think if you're like this, you're supposed to be here. But if you're like this, if you go from here to here, you think it's a massive change, but it's not. It's still not enough. But you feel like, oh, I already moved a lot. Well, so I tell them, I say, keep going until the rifle starts bouncing to the right. Then come back, and find kind of the happy place. And they'll call me back and say, dude, that fixed it. Of course it fixed it. It's recoil management. But there's still some F-class shooters that are like almost 90 degrees to the rifle. And it's not very good. They can make it work. And I think we do get we get away with a lot in F-class simply because we have a front rest and a rear bag. But I've also found out that if you go back to the basics, line up properly behind the rifle, do a routine every time, same thing every time, you're just going to be more consistent.
Sure.
Especially when you're under stress, when you're about to win a championship, when you're that close, everything becomes amplified. And if you don't have good fundamentals, that's when they're going to fail. You're going to fail. Something's going to go wrong. And of course, you're going to say, well, the gun did this, the gun did that. Well, of course it did, but it comes back to you ultimately, right? And, it's breathing. So when do you break the shot? When are you supposed to break the shot?
Natural respiratory pause.
Top or bottom?
Exhale, on the exhale.
Right.
That's what I teach. I teach everybody exhale all the way. Try to empty your lungs. That gives you a consistent place, right? So if I breathe in, it's going to be slightly different every time. And I'm going to have a different engagement and connection with my rifle. But if I exhale all the way every single time and my lungs are empty, that's something I can kind of get close to consistency with. And that's what we teach.
Right. And I agree that's when, especially laying prone, right? You inhale, you elevate. Mm-hmm. Now you have more pressure. It's a lot harder to maintain. Like, which one could you maintain longer? Well, it's the exhale, right? You're going to be more steady. So that's also what I teach when people ask me. I say, well, exhale. And this is why you got to work. Dry firing is a must, because this is where you practice all these things. Because if you're shooting and you're thinking about all these things, you haven't practiced enough. Yeah. Because this needs to be automatic.
When you're shooting all these, if you're thinking about all these things, you're actually not thinking about all these things. You're thinking about one. And if you're concentrating on one, then the other ones fall off, right? And that's what I see all the time where students, they're doing everything really well, but they're having some issues with trigger squeeze, which is really more of usually a follow through issue. But I'm like, hey, squeeze that trigger. One of the things I always say is, hey, dude, that trigger owe you money. Like, why are you slapping it? But the point is like once they start focusing on that trigger squeeze, suddenly I see this vertical or this vertical shift. And I'm looking at them and I see now they're so focused on that trigger squeeze that they're breathing as a shot or exhaling all the way. And then they so focus on the trigger squeeze, they take a breath in as they're breaking that shot. So, and the only way that you can notice that stuff is if you get down behind them and really, really pay attention, which I think is important. But it is funny, you're talking about, because I kind of thought that, probably body position wasn't as important given, some of the front rest and the rear rest that you guys use, but that is interesting. And I think you're right. The more I thought about it, it's like, again, there's guys that maybe so used to shooting kind of cockeyed off to one way. And they're like, and their answer to that would be, well, I've been shooting this way forever. And, I shoot, I don't know what your scores are, but let's say they throw out some sort of high score. But yeah, hey, you know what? You could consistently shoot 2 points higher or 3 points higher if you were doing it right. And I think that's where I think some of these things are opportunity loss, not so much quantifiable in the immediate, but are opportunity loss that we don't realize sometimes.
Well, the biggest thing in F class, because we have the front rest and the rear bag, at some point they start looking for comfort rather than having the best position possible, And it's like, well, what's going to be the most comfortable? Well, they're going to go for that because we lay there for 30 minutes sometimes, and yeah, comfortable most of the time is not the best.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you about that because you're right. They're oftentimes in these positions for comfort. And I get this question a lot. Well, Gary, it's more comfortable for me regarding like scope mounting. Gary, it's more comfortable for me if I angle the gun. So I have the gun slightly angled and then I angle and then I level the optic based on that angle. And I'm like, okay, that's great. It's comfortable. I mean, do you want to shoot well? Can you do that consistent? Like, I don't care. Like, if it's more comfortable for me to hold a pistol like this, do I hold the pistol like this? Or do we want to actually do the right technique, which is almost always weird? And feeling like a golf swing is a golf swing. I mean, I've only done it a couple of times. It come from baseball. Like, people show me how the proper technique of a golf swing. I'm like, this is the most uncomfortable thing possible.
It hurts.
Like, do you want to do this well, or do you want to be comfortable? And I think there are certain right and wrong ways, and I think there, often sometimes we get rigid in mindsets of like, this is the only way. I get that, but when you're shooting long range, if you're serious about shooting a distance, like that gun and that optic, some things need to be plumb in there, and you need to be able to do that consistently.
When some of the things I don't think about is when I'm just out there shooting a rifle, and I do my blackjack challenge and such, and I just go and I shoot, and in the comment section go, how is that rifle not recoiling? It's a 6.5 Creedmoor. How is it not kicking the crap out of him? Yeah. Well, because you got to manage it, right? This is where laying behind the gun and all the good stuff, having good follow through. And that's when it reminds me that most people, and I remember from when I first started, I couldn't get this rifle. I mean, it kicked the crap out of me, right? And they don't kick any less. They just, you manage it better, right? Also, sight picture, sometimes I run a camera through the scope. Yeah. And they go, well, no wonder he's good. His rifle doesn't even move. Well, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of hours behind the scope to keep it from wobbling all over, right? Yeah. And the biggest one is they go, how do you keep your eyes open when you shoot? Again, a lot of repetitions. Yeah. I struggle with that. Everything I've worked at, like I'm not, I always tell people I'm not talented. I have to work at everything. Yeah. And,
I suck at everything.
Keeping my eyes open
until I don't.
Keeping my eyes open is, one of those things that I worked at a lot because it was really hard, especially because when I started shooting, it was no ear pro, 270, 30-06. So, I mean, you talk about a flinch that you develop when this thing's going off, when you don't have any ear protection. Anyway, so I had to get rid of all that. And I mean, closing my eyes was a big one. Just, and dry firing is what did it for me. And it for some reason, if I look through the scope, even dry firing, I close my eyes. So what I started doing is just not even looking to the scope, just have my face on there and then just kind of look off to the side slightly. For some reason, if I didn't look to the scope, I could click it and I wouldn't close my eyes. The minute I look back to the scope, I'd go back to anticipating. It was weird, but it took me a while to just kind of look off to the side. And then I would look through the scope, but I wouldn't look at the crosshair. I just kind of look through, and then I could do that. And then if I look at the crosshair, because I would film myself and then look at the crosshair, and there it goes again. But anyway, it took a lot of repetitions, but somehow it's whatever you focus on changes how you react. And also in the pool, I get in the pool and splash water and just keep my eyes open, because that's, that also makes you close your eyes. But I worked at it freaking hard.
Well, no, so, I think that's crazy to me, and I think that's a really good. That's a cool story, because you're talking about filming yourself long before you probably had a YouTube channel, right?
It was hard, and now that I'm here, I'm now my focus when I shoot is to see my impact. So I can make a correction, and that also helps me keep my eyes open, because I'm looking for something. No,
I agree. Like, to me, being able to see, because when we're spotting for newer students, like there's almost like a light bulb moment for students when they're learning long range, because like when you first get students down there, you see them, they flinch every time the gun goes off. So as we're spotting, whether we get a hit or a miss, I'm trying to make a good correction on where their crosshairs were last. So I asked, hey, John, what was your call? And what I'm asking him for is like, hey, where was your crosshairs? And of course, usually the first couple of days, like, I don't know, because it's just like a car wreck. They're like, but there is that moment where now I'm like, hey, John, where's your crosshairs? Hey, man, you know what? I pulled that a little to the right or to the left. They start giving me feedback, and they're tracking those crosshairs. And that is a big step, I think, in a shooter's development or skill set. Like that right there is one of those quantifiable things. Like, hey, can you track your crosshairs through your shot? And that's the same thing with pistol, rifle, carbine, whatever, long range, whatever you want to talk about. Like that is usually like where you're starting to really, really dial things in and get better at something.
I shot silhouette for a while, and I kind of had to learn that on the job, calling my shots, because shooting silhouette, you do it offhand. And Mark Farr, who was the one teaching me this, and I would shoot with him, he'd always say, the way it works is you shoot and you have a spotter, and they're on the spotting scope, and they have a silhouette either drawn on paper or and they'll show you on it. They'll point at it and go, this is where you hit.
Yeah.
They don't even say this is where you hit. You shoot and you look down and they point at where you hit, so you can make a correction or whatever. So he would always say, you have to be able to call your shot so that when the shot goes off, you know where it was at, so that this helps you. Otherwise, it's never going to help you if you don't know where you hit in relation to where you broke the shot.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to call my shots, and that has been to this day one of the best things. Like
I agree.
When I'm shooting, even with my F-class rifle, if I pull the shot, I can call it, and I shoot an electronic target with a delay, sometimes like an 8-second delay. I'll shoot, and I already know, like, I pulled that one. Like, and it doesn't take much, but I'm like, I pulled it. Sure enough, 8 seconds later comes up, and I can tell you where it's going to be before it shows up. That is a skill that I think everybody that wants to shoot long range or any kind of shooting must master, because once you call your shots, I think you're so far ahead than everybody else.
You've begun getting good. Like
right.
you have, like you have at least established a baseline that's going to allow you to grow, because you can't grow before that. Because, if on one of for our level 1 culmination exercise for long range, they have to shoot a course of fire at distance. And the only thing that we're doing, the spotters on level 1, we give corrections. But, we tell students, like, look, man, if you don't apply the fundamentals and you yank that trigger and it's far off to the right, and I'm going to give you a correction, hey, you know what? You need to go 1 mil left. You might want to decide whether or not you're going to take that advice, because all we're doing is correcting off of bad data, right? So, like, it is, whether you're shooting silhouette, F-class, or something like PRS, or just recreational shooting, hunting, whatever it is, like that's like where you started to start move forward. I'm curious, you shoot F-class obviously, and then you shot some PRS. What do you think are the biggest crossovers that where F-class benefits you in PRS, and maybe vice versa? And
so before I answer your question, I'm going to touch one more thing about the calling your shots.
Oh yeah.
The problem with that is so many people use that as an excuse, and they use it after the fact. Right?
Sure.
They'll see a group, then they're all knotted up and they have one out and they go, well, I pulled that one,
Yeah.
And it's like, man, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, if you didn't call it, even if you called it, it counts, in my opinion.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
But that's you see that all the time. They have a little group and they have, I called that one. I pulled that one. Well, did you?
Yeah.
How do you know? Because it requires a really good shooter to be able to tell if you pulled it. And typically a really good shooter is not going to pull it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so be honest with yourself. It's probably one thing that I have to say. It's really hard, because it's a heartbreaker whenever you have to tell yourself that maybe you're not as good as you thought you were. But guess what? You can get better if you just work at it some more.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, sometimes it's a heartbreaker.
A new rifle always fixes it, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. It's also a heartbreaker to realize that maybe your gun and your ammo isn't doing what you think it is. Because I think that's part of it too, is a lot of the times, like, guns and ammo are going to do what they do. And, it may produce, if you're shooting a 5-round group, you may shoot 4 rounds right on top of each other, and then one might be slightly deviated up, down, left, or right. You might have done everything right. It's just that ammo is going to do what it does sometimes. You may have a flyer, or you may have an inconsistent round, or something weird happen harmonically with the gun. And those are things that I think people need to take into account. One of the things, like when I'm doing accuracy tests just for that now, I've kind of moved to like a 20-round group baseline. I may show the first 5 rounds, but I think, the more is better is definitely, when we have a larger data set, I think we get better information out of that.
My rifle shoots better than I do. Have you heard that one before?
100%. I hear it all the time, but it's not true. Always.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. I as a F-class competitor, that's one of those things that we always assume that the rifle never shoots better than us, which is why we're always tuning and making it better. And I think that's the reason we get them to shoot as good as we can, because rifles shoot well, but sometimes they don't. And you have to be able to tell when. Now, on the other side of that argument, not every rifle is a quarter MOA rifle. Not every rifle is a half MOA rifle. So, reloaders, sometimes they chase way too hard, and sometimes the rifle just can't do it.
Yeah.
And they feel like maybe they're not good reloaders, maybe they're not good shooters. Sometimes the rifle just can't do it.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was your question? I forgot it already.
Oh, I was asking you, hey, I said,
crossover. Yeah.
Yep. Crossover, having, experience, obviously a lot of experience shooting F-class, and then you do some PRS. What do you feel like what specifically in areas do you feel like one benefits the other and vice versa? Breaking
a good shot. In F-class, it's easier because we have a good rest and a good rear bag, but we break good shots more than PRS, right? Simply because we're stable.
Yeah.
So it kind of teaches you how to break good shots. So when I went to PRS and I wasn't as stable, I worked at getting more stable so that I could get what was familiar to me, which is breaking a really good shot, being steady.
You didn't have to worry about the trigger pull portion of that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew how to pull a trigger. I knew when to pull it, but I wouldn't shoot in the wobble. Like a lot of new shooters, I think they're like, well, that's just how it is, and they shoot. I knew that's not how it is, at least not in F-class. So when I was moving all around, I knew this is not good. I'm not going to pull the trigger. So I would find ways to become more stable. The other thing is I think mentally is the big one. Number one, I knew that I wasn't going to win.
Yeah.
So I didn't worry about trying to win. I just went. I mean, don't get me wrong. I showed up. I prepared. I had a good rifle. My rifle was good. My rifle probably shot as good or better than any of the other rifles there if we were going to shoot an F-class competition.
Now, did you bring your F-class rifle? Is that what you brought?
No. I brought a PRS rifle.
Okay.
But I tuned it just like an F-class rifle, Yeah. And simply because that's what I know, right? That's what I'm familiar with. And so the rifle shot great, which gave me confidence to know that, hey, if I miss, it's me, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing to know when it's you and when it's the rifle. So that, breaking the trigger and expectations, knowing that I'm not very good at this game. So don't get upset if you're not winning. Don't get upset if you have a bad stage, because you're going to have I budgeted for bad stages simply because I know. I mean, heck, I've been shooting F-class for a long time. I've done really well in F-class. I still have bad stages.
Sure.
So why wouldn't I expect to have them at a sport that I've never shot at, that I've never shot before? So that was a big one for me, to be able to not get pissed off and actually enjoy it. And I always say, either you win or you learn. And I was there to learn. And I learned a lot. I learned obviously about prepping for the next stage, target acquisition. I learned about doping the rifle, maintaining, tracking DA all day to keep with the elevation changes. I learned about
equipment management, I'm sure.
Equipment management, target acquisition was a big one. Finding the targets, because we don't have to do it in F-class. I mean, the target's there. It's not going anywhere. You have a rest. But I learned a lot about that. And I actually transferred it to F-class. So in F-class, you have static targets, 800 yards, 900, 1,000. So we had our zeros. 800 yards is 16 or whatever MOA. 20 whatever MOA and 23 or whatever. And that was just... And it didn't matter. DA didn't matter because we get sighters. All I had to do is hit the paper, and then I could just dial from there, right? So we always, oftentimes we just had an 800 yard zero, and you go, well, from 800 to 900 is 3 MOA, from 900 to 1,000 is 4 MOA. That's the quick formula. You'll hit the paper, dial up from there. The problem is when you're shooting a Palma, you only get 2 sighters. And if you travel internationally, they're convertible, meaning if you hit in the center, you can convert them for score. And instead of shooting 2 and 15, which is 17, now you can shoot 15 because you convert the first 2. Well, that's a huge advantage in the wind. If all I have to do is shoot 15 versus my opponent shooting 17, I have an advantage because they're going to be in the wind longer, which is more potential for dropping a point. So I started carrying a Kestrel in F-class, and I'm truing up my drops and everything. So now with my F-class rifle, I can hit that 1 MOA target, even the half MOA target on the first shot.
Oh, that's
because now I can convert a lot more sighters, and it just gives me a lot more confidence, So I've kind of used those for what I learned in PRS, I've used in F-class, and some of what I knew in F-class helped me in PRS. But yeah, you'll see me in an F-class match with a Kestrel every day.
And is that, I guess that's fairly rare.
Yeah, it's becoming more popular, and coincidentally, it's becoming more popular because more guys have tried PRS. No, it's not because of me. I don't think so, but it's just more people have tried PRS, and they realize, oh, you know what? I can get on, this whole thing about just hit the target and dial from there is kind of becoming old school. And now it's about, we have better guns than they do in PRS. We have better rests, like we should be able to hit that target 90 to 100% of the time. Right. So why don't we? So I started making a point to do that, and I can do it pretty consistently. It also helps with wind reading, right? You kind of get a wind reading. So in F-class, you're not allowed any electronics on the line, but ahead of time, I can look at the flag, I can gauge the wind, and then I can get a plan in my head beforehand. And then once I lay down, I have an idea of how much, because we hold with the scope, well, kind of Kentucky windage, because the target has rings. So the rings are half MOA apart. So I can use those to aim. But if, from center to the edge of black is 2 MOA roughly. So if it's more than 2 MOA wind, let's say it's a 4 MOA wind, I don't like to hold more than 1 MOA on target. So I get ahead of time. So when I lay down, I put 3 minutes on the gun. And again, I'm trying to hit the center, and I already have my elevation. I have a Kestrel that tells me roughly how much wind. And if it just gives you a huge boost of confidence when even in really hard wind, you can get it down there and hit a 1 MOA target at 1,000 yards on the first shot, Yeah. And then you just know you're there, you're dialed. But, it's helped a lot. And, I think everybody should, cross train, the PRS guys, go to an F-class match. In F-class, all your shots are accounted for. Like, you will see on paper what your groups look like. And you talk about 20-shot groups. That's what you do in F-class. So if you think your gun, you'll really know how good, you'll find out how good your gun really is when you shoot an F-class match. Yeah. I know a few guys that have done it, and it's a big eye-opening experience for them to go, wow, this gun doesn't shoot as good as I thought it did. Yeah, well, and of course they work at it, they get it better, and then when they go to PRS, guess what? Their scores got higher because all of a sudden they don't get screwed by the wind as much.
Now, when you obviously, I definitely know for a fact, the F-class guys definitely spend much more time on precision with getting all the mechanical components of that gun correct. What do you think is probably like the biggest variable that you feel like you need to control to get the most amount of precision out of your rifle possible?
Ignition. That's one thing that nobody ever talks about. We're starting to talk about it a lot here on this podcast. The way that firing pin gets delivered to the primer is extremely important. And that's something that nobody talks about. Like if back in the day, you'd have a Remington 700 blueprinted. Well, they would cut the front of the face. They would recut the threads. They would cut the lugs. They would move the bolt handle. They do all that, but they would never address the firing pin and make sure that it doesn't have any drag and how it gets delivered to the firing pin. That's the meat and potatoes of the whole thing, right? That's the spark plug. And even custom actions have issues sometimes, so people, we sell Remington 700 bolt shrouds. They also fit some of the Remington clones with fixes that we have done for over a decade to our F-class rifles. That'll fix, they'll reduce drag. That firing pin, it's being guided by that bolt shroud. How is it guided? It's it's a pin with a hole in it, you know,
Right.
Or vice versa. It's the shroud has a hole and the pin runs down it, powered by a spring, and it's not very sophisticated. Well, guess what? If you have drag between that firing pin and that bolt shroud, you're going to have inconsistency.
If I was to have guessed, if you'd asked me to guess what your answer was going to be with that, that would have been the last thing that I would have guessed. So
Exactly.
That's super interesting. I love it.
Exactly. And you know, oftentimes, and see, the problem is sometimes they're fine, right? And then guess what? You start cleaning your rifle, crap gets built up in there. I mean, I'm willing to bet that most shooters never take their bolt shroud out and clean out the inside of their bolt action or their bolt
100%, yeah.
and clean out and make sure the firing pin is fine and it's properly lubed. But that stuff is super important. I mean, we agonize over this stuff in F-class and bench rest, and we kind of learned that from the bench rest crowd, because if that firing pin is not getting delivered the exact same way every time, that primer is not going to be hit the same way every time. And if that doesn't get struck the same every time, it's not going to ignite the same, and you're never going to have consistency. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what powder you shoot, how much powder, what bullet, nothing. You can buy a new barrel. You can buy new scope. You can buy, I mean, this simple shroud that we make has fixed many scopes. Because they think, you know, it's so erratic. They think the scope is bouncing, but but anyway, once you fix that, then everything else seems to become a lot easier, simply because now you have consistency.
Functionally, and without giving away anything, you know, proprietary, like when you say making it more consistent, like what are some of the things that your bolt shroud is doing specifically?
So we reduce drag.
Okay.
And, so we have some bolt shrouds. We've talked about it a bunch here. So, there's no secrets. So the bolt shroud, this hole here, where the firing pin goes down, is roughly 1.2 inches, 1 inch, 200 thousandths. Okay. So what we do is we relieve a portion of it, because you don't need inch 200 thousandths to guide a firing pin. So we take half of that out. So now it just leaves you half. So that's why I'm saying we reduce drag by at least 50%, because we literally remove 50% of the material where it's dragging. Okay. The tolerances, we make them better. So what we do is we tightened what was too loose and we loosened what was too tight. And I learned this from Speedy. You know, some things were too tight and some were too loose. So we fixed all that. So our shrouds, it's $125. You get a brand new shroud. You get a brand new spring that is made out of spring steel, like real. Most people have never changed a spring ever. So you get it comes with a really good Wolf spring. Get a shroud, $125. You can put it in yourself, and that's going to fix a lot of issues that people have.
Interesting.
If there was nothing broken, it's not going to hurt. You're still going to reduce drag. But in my opinion, that's where everybody should start. You got to make sure that's good. After that, yeah, you know, you got to have good ammo. You got to have good powder. You got to have a good bullet. You got to have all of the above, right? The things that everybody knows. But if you skip this and you're having ignition issues, you're just not ever going to get there. And it's going to be very frustrating. It's going to be very expensive, because you're going to change triggers, scopes, barrels, and you're just going to keep chasing it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's interesting. What is the most? What's the most common caliber and cartridge in F class?
Well, now 7mm for sure. It used to be the 284 Shaheen. Now we have kind of moved away from those and gotten into the Magnums. You know, the PRCW is very popular, and that's just a 6.5 PRC necked up to 7mm. That one's really popular. The 300 WSM is popular.
Oh, really?
Now, the 7-300's making a comeback. 7 by 300 WSM, simply because Lapua now is making 300 WSM brass. So the F-class shooters are kind of starting to give it a try again. The SOM, short action ultra magnum 7 SOM, is a popular one. Anything that can push a 180 hybrid around 2,900 at 3,000 feet per second is about the sweet spot. Above that, you're really sacrificing barrel life. And then, of course, recoil becomes a problem. The 300 WSM is a good one, but again, you have the recoil issues, right? Like barrel life is good, but then you have recoil. You're shooting a 215 grain bullet about 2,850, 2,900. It's not nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And we're not allowed brakes. So, you know, not everybody can shoot a 300 WSM. I tried it back in the day. It just didn't work for me, you know. But those are kind of the most popular ones. You're going to have a 7mm going 180 hybrid, 2,900 to 3,000, or a 300 WSM.
Nobody's shooting like 300 PRC. It sounds like you're pretty much staying
too
short
much
action. Yeah.
No, it's not that. It's just it's back to the recoil and barrel life.
Yeah.
You know, there's been some guys that have tried the 300 Norma, 300 Win Mag. But, you know, ultimately, if it upsets, keep in mind, we shoot for 2 or 3 days. We shoot 60 rounds or so a day. May not sound like much, but it'll tire you out, you know. And when you're shooting a one-way target at 1,000 yards, you can't have the slightest flinch, you know. You have to break a perfect shot every time. And when you have something kicking you so hard, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how tough you think you are, subconsciously, your body's going to try to protect itself.
Yeah.
Let's just say none of that is an issue. Well, guess what? Your setup, your front rest, your rear bag, everything has a limit. And recoil is not, you know, when a rifle goes off, it's not simply back and forth. Yeah. It's also torquing.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, you're taking a bullet from 0 to about 250,000 RPM in a matter of milliseconds. I mean, that thing is torquing, right? So when you get a bullet that heavy going that fast, it's going to torque. And we're back to, you shoot, the rear back kind of kicks out. You got to reset everything. And now instead of shooting, instead of watching the wind, you're trying to get your rifle back. And that's why the 300 didn't work for me. It's not that I couldn't handle the recoil. It was the setup. It was hard for me to shoot it. Because when it was calm, everybody around me is pounding 10s and X's while I'm over here trying to get this thing set up again. And they'll be done, they're clean, and I'm sitting here on shot 12 out of 20. And I was exposed to the wind much longer.
Right.
And it just got to the point where I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to. It's no different than shooting off a bipod. You shoot a 6BR versus a 300 Norma. They're not the same. You know, the 6BR, it's so much easier to shoot. You're gonna score way better if it's calm with a 300. I mean, with a 6BR. Now the 300 is gonna help you in the wind, but you can manage a 6BR or a dasher much better. And I think that's why PRS guys are shooting 6mm, simply because they're a lot easier to manage and 100%. They can score higher with the rifle that they can shoot better.
Yeah, no, I think the takeaway there, I think was kind of universal too, is that increased recoil also increases inconsistency. I think that's kind of a good rule of thumb to live by.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting punched by this thing.
And so is your equipment.
Yeah. And another thing I want to touch on is people forget that we have an explosion. I guess it's an implosion. What would it be? 60,000 PSI thereabouts happening every time we pull the trigger. If you've ever had a tire blowout, that's about 60 PSI. They're loud. They do a lot of damage. So do not push these things too hard. If you want more speed, go to a bigger cartridge. It's one of those things that I see a lot where people are always trying to not it's ironically like those of us that do it all the time, we stay away from the super high pressures, but it seems like the amateur guys or the novice shooters, they always bragging about how hot their loads are, and I shoot hot loads. Guys, that is extremely dangerous. Don't do it. If you want more speed, get a new rifle, a bigger one.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of ironic too, is you were talking about 6mm and PRS and some other types of shooting like that. And, they developed all these PRS cartridges early into the PRS, like 6GT and things like that, because it allowed them more volume, case volume. So it gave them higher velocity because they were shooting for like pushing these 6mm at like 3,200 with the idea that, hey, we're going to beat the wind. Well, it's funny how that has evolved, because now they're running some of these high capacity cartridges like 6GT, but they're loading them down to like 2830 so they can actually see their impacts, and actually they're not dealing with such amount of recoil, because if you're shooting 300 or 400 yards during that recoil pulse at 3,100 feet per second, it's already got there. If you missed hit, you have no idea which one of those.
Yeah. And you just have to find what works for you, but typically less recoil is going to be better.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
And that's where we're at in F-class. We're trying to maintain the lowest amount of recoil with the most ballistics, and we got to find that balance, right? And it's a balance that has over the years kind of moved up, because we were shooting 284s, 2770, 2800, 180 hybrid, and now we're about 2900. So and that helps because of stock designs and different powders that are available that can give you the speed without burning out your barrels as bad as they used to. But and shooters have become better. We talk about fundamentals and how to lane sideways. I think the guys that are trying to shoot the heavier stuff, they have to be better at that, because you have no choice. But overall, you gotta pick your poison. And at the end of the day, it's you against the target, nothing else.
Yeah. We still continue to see innovations take place in long range. Like, what do you think? What do you feel like are some of the biggest innovations in the last 10 years when it comes to increasing performance capabilities with long range?
Yeah. So bullets for sure. That's become, we have really good bullets. You almost can't get a bad bullet. That helps a lot. Scopes, you almost can't get a bad scope. Even a budget scope are really good. I mean, it used to be where we always assumed all scopes were good, but we didn't know, right? And they weren't all good. But now, even the budget scopes are really good. However, what we think about as a budget scope, it's not what we used to think 10 years ago, right? A budget scope 10 years ago was a $30, $40 scope. Now a $600 scope is a budget scope.
That's a great point.
So
yeah,
we just had a mental shift as to what budget is, but we're just getting so much value nowadays. Value is incredible for what we get. I mean,
I agree.
The actions that you have available. I mean, we used to take a Remington 700 and chop it all up and fix it. And you just ended up with a very expensive Remington 700. And now, you can go buy an action ready to go that is really good. And you can get a pre-fit barrel. That's also really good. You can screw them together yourself. You can go online, go on YouTube and Google how to load ammo, and you find somebody that can teach you beyond the book, right? You got to read the book.
Yeah.
But it'll teach you beyond the book. Because there's so much beyond the book, that's available. And, within a few months, you can be shooting really good, way beyond what you ever thought you could do. And the information's out there. You just got to find it and find a good source for that information, and you're on your way.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool to see that there's so much available online with information wise for getting people into long range shooting, right? There's obviously pros and cons to that, but I think generally speaking, it's awesome. And we're seeing long range, I think, in all types, all disciplines, just increase dramatically. And I think it's freaking awesome. I love, it's what I love shooting pistols, carbines. I love doing the tactical stuff, but man, long range shooting, I don't think there's anything else this is more enjoyable and gratifying as far as I see it. So it's really cool to be able to share that with so many other people. And it's cool. Like, we get customers and clients in, and they're like, literally one of our last class, 80-year-old dude could barely shoot from a bench, but he was like, my bucket list was to shoot 1,000 yards. And man, that guy was like a kid all over again at 80 years old, freaking hit 1,000 yards. Couldn't be happier. And I think that's just a really cool experience for people to get to take part in, and for us to take part in, and, share the information that we have. Well, the other thing too is, like, what I do love about sharing the knowledge and information that we do online is, like, helping people skip all the mistakes that I'm sure you made, I made. I think there's a lot of value in that.
Well, we have a common friend, Ray. Mm-hmm. And, he came to me and he said, "Hey man, I want to."
Oh, you're talking. I had a text from him today, by the way. I always thought you were talking about Ray Helms, but I'm
no, the other Ray.
Yeah.
But yeah, we know Ray. But Ray came to me and so he was talking to the gym owner. We go to the same gym, and he said he was talking about long range and whatever. And he said, "Well, why don't you ask Eric to teach you?" And he goes, "Eric does that?" Because I don't go around telling people, "Hey, dude, I just go and do my thing." Yeah. And he goes, "Eric does that?" And the gym owner said, "Man, I don't know that he does anything else." So anyway, so Ray reached out and I said, "Yeah, man, I'll help you." And Ray probably doesn't realize how far he's come in such a short period of time. He's gotten really good, really fast. And that's because of the information that's available. Yeah. The equipment that's available. When he came here, he had some kind of factory rifle, and I was able to get him to hit the 2-inch target at 500 yards just with some minor tweaks. Instruction. Yeah. Just do this. I just called the win for him, and I set up his app on his phone. He had it set up incorrectly. And once, we ran the bullet over the chronograph, threw it up to BC, and just some minor help. I didn't lay there and I didn't nitpick his setup or his, but he could shoot well enough that I knew he could hit it. But I set up his app and all that, and within, it's on my YouTube channel. Within one episode, he was hitting that target, and he hit it, and he was super excited. And I think he was getting to the frustration stage where he wasn't hitting targets like he thought he could. He came here one time. I mean, I spent 2-3 hours with him, and man, he hit that 2-inch target and he was ready to go. And after that, I feel like that really sparked, like I just put gas on the fire, because after that, he's been shooting so much. Now he's got a chronograph. Now he's got, just better information available to him. He's starting to hand load now. And it's just not him. You know, I get messages from people, like you talk about older people that say, hey, I'm in my 70s. I saw this one episode of yours and that kind of got me excited about reloading again, and went into my reloading room, dusted off my old dies, and I started reloading again. And now I'm going to the range, and I ran into an old friend, and now we you know what I mean? It's just cool stuff.
Yeah. Ray's a great guy. He's been a great customer. He calls us up, and, you know, I try to give him as much information I can. But yeah, he got a Masterpiece Arms rifle from us, and he just recently bought another optic from us. And he told me, he's like, hey man, I'm getting serious. He told me, obviously I watched your episode with him, and then, you know, he told me that he spent some more time with you. So it is really cool to see, whether it's somebody like Ray or, you know, again, older folks. Or my favorite thing with our training, whether it's regardless of the discipline, is when we see, like, you know, families come out. You know, that's a really cool, because, you know, that's an experience with kids and fathers and daughters and wives and all that other stuff. Like, I don't care if you're talking about an amusement park or whatever else. That is a memory that's going to stick in their head forever. And that's really cool to see too. So there's so much, you know, we talked a little bit at the beginning of this. I don't remember if it was on video or not, or it was prior to us going live, but, you know, just some of the negatives of, you know, being on social media. But I definitely think that the positives far outweigh that. We get to get a message out. We get to, obviously there's some benefits to, you know, business and stuff, things like that it generates. But it's been a super great experience overall, even on YouTube. That, I don't know about you guys, but man, they demonetize the living piss out of us.
We certainly don't do it for the money.
Yeah, no,
I'll tell you that.
No.
And whatever, man. I just enjoy since day one. I'm so glad that I started YouTube when I started, because that's when I was learning F-class and learning. And I'm always the type that gets so excited about learning stuff that I just want to pass it on. And, that's kind of how the YouTube channel got started. I would pass stuff, things on that I learned, and, you know, over the years, you know, I've been at YouTube over a decade now.
Oh, wow.
And it was just me, like, if you go to the very early episodes, it's just me learning how to do this and say, hey, you know, this is how you freaking clean out a primer pocket, or this is how you whatever, you know. And fast forward to now, you know, and it's you know, I've had been lucky enough to have won some really big championships, you know, and for anybody that's been following me along, they see that, oh, you know, this guy's, I've been sharing it all along, and it's not for anything other than just wanting to help and kind of share what I've learned. But
I agree.
Fun.
Like, I was, you know, very resistant. I've been at, you know, we had a lot of clients asking us to get on YouTube for a really long time, and I just didn't want to be part of this. I had a stereotype that I think exists of like this gun tuber thing that I just didn't want to be associated with. But it was COVID actually that kind of, we'd actually shut down training. We were here in West Virginia, so we weren't shut down that very long. But, you know, during that time, we didn't know how long we were going to be shut down. It was kind of in our prime training season. So, you know, I had actually started a YouTube channel. I wasn't posting or anything. I probably had it for a couple of years. And I think I put like one video about bipods or something up there that I filmed down here in my basement with a cell phone and a freaking, you know, tuna can. But then I started putting stuff out on YouTube with the idea like, hey, hey, all my customers, I know we're not training. Here's some stuff that you guys, and kind of grew from there. But, you know, it takes a lot to put yourself out there like that. And what were, you know, obviously when you were beginning and things like that, what were some of the things that may have you've been resistant to getting on YouTube, but compared to that, it kind of overcame? Because I don't think everybody. I know I didn't want to get out here and put my life out here, and you don't know kind of weirdos are watching YouTube or anything else. So what made you want to do that?
Well, it was like I said, I just excited to share the stuff that I learned, and hoping to help others. And I was kind of learning the YouTube space, and after I did it for a few years, and then I quit doing my gun tube because I became a home builder. I had a channel called Texas Barndominiums. So I started.
I've watched a few of your videos on that. It was good.
So I started posting over there, and I kind of left this one behind because that became my priority. And I did that for a while. And then I guess around 2014 or so is when I started posting Texas Barndominiums. 2015, somewhere around there. Well, then fast forward to 2020, COVID hits, and that's when I came back to this channel, and or actually my YouTube channel, because this is my podcast channel. But anyway, I went back to my Eric Cortina channel, talk about guns and stuff, and it sparked something. I don't know what it was at that point. I think it's because I at the time I now had. It's like I came onto YouTube space, and then I was kind of sharing kind of what I knew, what I was learning. I go away, I come back, and now I'm a lot more experienced. Now I actually have some titles under my belt. So my confidence was a lot higher to be able to share information, because now it was different. It was not me just telling you what I just learned, but now I'm telling you what works. What has worked, right? And that shift really helped me deliver the information better. And then, of course, you talk about getting demonetized in YouTube, and then YouTube came up with a deal about you can't show reloads, you can't show this, and then I kind of jumped on Patreon around COVID time to kind of show people about reloading and all that. And in the meantime, I was like, well, Patreon at some point is going to be the same way. Yeah. So in the meantime, I started working on a website. Website was done, and now we kind of transferred the content over to our website, which we manage, and we don't have to worry about getting,
censored. So that's interesting.
In any way.
That was one thing that I've been playing around. I might, in another time, I'll probably send you a text and pick your brain about that. Because that's something I've been wanting to do for just that reason. Because we've been censored hard on YouTube, and luckily, I mean, I think we've obviously grown in spite of those challenges. And for people out there that are listening, it's not about the demonetization that matters. Like I know there's a stereotype that you have 100,000 followers or something, and you're making millions or something. Let me assure you that is not the case. But demonetization isn't a big deal as far as the revenue that you lose on that video. Demonetization means they're going to crush that video as far as
exposure.
Like you might as well you've kind of wasted your time, or it's probably going to be seen by probably about 1/100th of its potential. So that's where it kicks people in the nuts, or at least it does. I get pissed off.
Yeah. And that's why it's important. It's important for people to subscribe. That's why we always ask you subscribe and turn on the bell.
Notification.
The notification, because unless you turn on the notification, if YouTube decides, you know what, this video, I'm going to demonetize, which means we're not going to show it. Pretty much they're not going to show it to you.
Nope.
Even if you are subscribed, but you don't have the bell or whatever, all the notifications, they're not going to show it to you.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you might think we haven't been posting in a long time when we have. They just haven't been showing you. And one thing that I noticed is once you get demonetized, it's not just the one video gets demonetized, but the rest of your videos for a while, they don't get showed to people. Like your views will drastically drop for a while. It's like they put you on timeout for a while.
somebody says, and I don't know how true this is, that there's a social credit score, which I believe you can call it, categorize it, whatever you want, but there is definitely something like that. So here's a funny story that kind of illustrates this. The other night I did a joint live stream with Nate from VFT. So we both did the live stream. I did it from my channel, did it from him, the exact same live stream. His was monetized, mine was not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. No.
That's how that works. But anyway, so that's why I tell people, like, go to the forum, and there you can say whatever. I can teach you whatever, if you become a member over there, if you have any questions, you can reach me directly via Messenger. Or if you absolutely need me to show you something, I'll make a video answering whatever question you may have. And that's really where you have access to me the best way possible,
And you're hosting all that on your website.
Yeah, it's all on my website. We're hosting it. So there's no censorship of any kind.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's going to cost you a little money, $15 a month. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, we have hundreds of videos there. Like you can join, and they're all in chronological order. You can spend a lot of time, but I guarantee you, if you watch them all, number one, let me know and I'll give you some kind of price. Because if you sit there and watch every single one of my videos and you're not absolutely sick of me, you deserve some kind of price. However, if you do, you're going to learn a lot, because I put out there everything that I can possibly put out there. And it's, there's a lot of members of the forum that have become really good shooters. They've started competing, because you probably figured this out. But if you're gonna want me to teach you something, you're gonna have to start competing. That's where you're really gonna put everything to the test, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a bad thing. Competing is a wonderful thing. That's gonna speed everything up. But there's so many members of my forum that are become competitors because of the forum, and they're doing really well. And guess what? They've met other competitors. They become friends with them, and guess what? They help each other, and now they just snowballs, right? And they just get better.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That's something, and I've struggled with that. Like, obviously, it takes time to do this stuff, and like I run a business. I'm not a full-time content creator. We're running a business, training, retail. But I guess I struggle a little bit figuring out ways, or feeling, I guess, a little bad about monetizing things. And at the end of the day, I don't know, that's something I like, that model where you can go on, do a $15 a month subscription and hopefully give a lot of value to people.
Yeah. I try to make that $15 as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
That's my goal. And and the reason I had to charge is because I had to pay for a website and everything.
Like, people don't understand that.
It's not free.
All this stuff, it doesn't just happen. It's not free. You're paying for all kinds of different services, and
I didn't get approved for the reloading course grant from the government.
There's not a fund for that.
I haven't found one. Yeah. But anyway, Gary, dude, thank you so much for being on. I know you're real busy. You have a lot on your plate. And if anybody didn't know about you, hopefully they found you here, and you can go over and check you out on your channel. And you have a full retail shop, right?
We do.
Whatever they need.
Yep. We only carry the stuff. Well, you know what? We only carry stuff I really like. That's really what it comes down to. And stuff we've tested, we believe in. So go check that out. And of course, all of our socials, Paramount Tactical on YouTube, Rumble, all that good stuff. We'd love to. I think there's a lot of, obviously a lot of, and I know, like, people tell me, it's like, just watching, in my comments or messages or whatever, I'm just watching Eric's, this is a great video. So there's obviously a ton of crossover, and as there should be. But,
if you really stop to think about it, there's not that many of us. And, again, for the third or fourth time to touch on the comment section, it makes zero sense that we're against each other.
Yeah.
We're not that big of a community. We should be helping each other, supporting each other. And that's another reason that I want to have this podcast channel. Number one, because I'm freaking curious and I like talking to different people in different places, like you and some of the other guests I've had. Yeah. I don't agree with them all, but guess what? Sure. It's always fun to have a conversation. Just because I don't agree with some of my guests doesn't mean that doesn't mean nobody's going to agree with them. And hey, let's have a conversation. Let's have a chat, and I'll film it and I'll put it out for people to watch. You know, it's, I find it interesting, and like I said, we're not that big of a community. If we can grow the community, let's freaking do it.
100% agree. Like it's important that we stick together for legal reasons, political reasons, all those things. We can't be divided. And quite frankly, I mean, most of my best friends, the best friends I have are the guys that I argue with constantly, and we give each other shit. So, you know, I think people need to enter any of these debates, conversations, or whatever else, you know, with kind of an open mind, but, you know, just in good faith, and not there to prove like, oh, he's wrong, I'm wrong about this or that or whatever. Like, it's just silly. It's dumb. And at the end of the day, we're all friends. And absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys up at SHOT Show again next year.
All right, man.
All right.
That's it. Take care.
All right, man. Thank you. Have a good one.
Later.
Bye.